Well, I guess I'll call the meeting to order because I'm the clerk still. And in 1 minute, I won't be the clerk anymore. We're going to elect a new chair and clerk of the board. So, okay, we need to do a roll call vote to call the meeting to order. So, Mr. Dane?
Present.
Ms. Escobedo?
Present.
Okay, Ms.
Present.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Hartman?
Present.
And Mr. Howell is not here yet. And myself, Ms. Ackerman, I am here. I think maybe there's confusion with the start time was earlier tonight. So I don't know. I don't know why he's not here, but I know I had to rush to get here. So we might want to discuss it. Okay, so do we have a nomination for chair?
I move to nominate Henry Dane as chair.
Okay, is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Okay, I guess we need a roll call vote. Mr. Dane, are you willing
Aye.
to do it? Okay, great. Ms. Escobedo?
Aye.
Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
And myself, Ms. Ackerman, aye. And Mr. Howell is absent. So Henry, go ahead and take over the meeting then. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. But before we do that, we do need to nominate and elect a clerk as well. So I will entertain a motion
Okay.
for the appointment of a clerk,
I nominate Mary Hartman to be clerk.
and I will second that.
Okay.
Roll call vote.
All right, roll call. I
Me
guess
too.
I'm still the clerk because
Go
you haven't been voted
That's
yet.
right, Henry.
All right, Mr. Dane,
Aye.
Ms. Escobedo,
Aye.
Ms. Hartman,
Aye.
and myself, Ms. Ackerman, aye. Thank you both. They're big jobs. Appreciate it. I think you'll be a good team, you two. It'll be very good.
Well, we'll have fun together.
Mhm.
And it's no point doing it if you don't enjoy it. But starting off, I would like to thank and recognize Matt for his 3 years of very diligent and useful service to the board and to the town.
Yes.
And
Yes.
his service as chair in the most recent year, where he did a great deal of work and was, very helpful.
Let me just go right to the Yep.
And I also want to welcome our new member who isn't here yet, Mark Howell. But I will welcome him in absentia, and he can thank me when he gets here. So you may notice that the agenda is slightly different from what it has been in the past. And there were a number of reasons for doing that, aside from there being a new sheriff in town. And that is that I felt it was important to make public comment a more useful activity at our meetings, and do two things: not have people have to wait until 10:30 at night to be able to be heard about things that they wanted to comment on, and also to be able to have people comment on items on the agenda before they were decided, when they would have something to contribute to it, because it didn't really seem very sensible to have people make their comments after the action had been taken. So we have put we have put on the agenda tonight a period for public comment, and the reason that we have excluded from the public comment period items that are on the agenda is that there will be an opportunity when those agenda items come up after the board has after the board has discussed them and is ready to vote on them, to ask for public comment on things that we're about to take action on, where it might make a difference in what we decide. So, that is after the election is the first item of business on the agenda, and I will open up the period of public comment, and we have asked that people speak for no more than 3 minutes, and that that are not on the agenda for tonight. So do we have anybody present or online who would like to comment? I would also say that I especially appreciate, I know that there are many reasons that people can't attend meetings in person. But having personal contact and being face-to-face people does have a certain additional impact that being an image on a video screen does not have. So we have a speaker. Could you introduce yourself and tell us what you'd like to talk about?
Sure. My name is Joel Gagne. I live at 31 Central Street. And before I speak, I want to thank the select board for their time. I realize this is a volunteer position and the hours you put in are the equivalent of a full-time position. I just want to say in advance, I thank you for your service.
We're well paid for it.
Sure. I rise to speak about town meeting. I attended town meeting, specifically around the school funding issue. Like many parents, I moved to Concord for its great schools. I was willing to pay the high housing costs so my children can receive a high quality public education. This is why we moved here more than anything else. And I'm not alone in that thinking. Needless to say, I thought the whole issue of capping the school budget increase that would have forced the district into cuts was wrong. I realized when Concord citizens, young and old, parent and non-parent, voted in such overwhelming fashion that it was unnecessary for the moderator to even count the vote. You did not need to be a political expert to see which way this was going. Supporters like myself wrote dozens of letters to the finance committee asking them not to do this. Many supporters stayed on in Zoom till very late at night, asking them not to do this. It did not work. On a 7-7 vote, they ignored it and put it forward anyways. To make matters worse, this select board, knowing the opposition from the community and from the school committee, backed it anyway. I do not recall any of you running for office promising to cut the school budget. When it came to town meetings, not one person from the crowd stood up and spoke in favor of the cap. All who spoke up spoke out against it. When it came to the very reasonable budget request by the school district, which was lower than the increase for the rest of the town government, it was the opposite. Everyone spoke in favor and no one spoke out against it. So the question I have to the select board is, who are you representing? The middle school vote passed at town meeting and at the ballot twice by landslides. The funding issue passed by a landslide at town meeting. I do not know what group is being represented here that is inspiring this board to thumb its nose at so many people and take the embarrassment it suffered at town meeting. But I do know this, it is not seniors, as some people claim. I was at these town meetings. I'm very proud to say that seniors voted with their hands up to support our schools. And it's also true at the ballot box. You don't get the type of vote at the ballot box with parents only. Concord seniors support Concord schools, and I'm very proud of that. Concord teachers and administrators deserve better than this. The whole thing was totally unnecessary. All you did was put unneeded stress on people who have way too much stress already. Public education is under attack in this country. And for the Concord Finance Committee and the Select Board to do what they did has brought down morale and piled on more work to an administration that's already overworked.
Thank you. One of the things I should say about public comment on items that are not on the agenda is that you express your opinion and we respect that opinion, but this is not the opportunity for us to respond or to answer the questions that you have raised. But we understand the questions and we understand the situation, and we very much appreciate hearing your point of view. Thank you.
I want to finish my comments. I still have 90 seconds.
90 seconds. Okay.
I timed it.
I'll give any man 90 seconds.
When I talk, and I'm finishing, when I talk to supporters of schools, the common theme is how many times we have to say yes. Yes, we want quality schools and willing to pay for them. In closing, I will say this. We've had enough. We have had enough of our schools being hit with punitive tactics by a select few. We've had enough of our local leaders not giving the teachers and administrators the respect they deserve. If things do not change and quick, I can say that Concord will be in the market for new leaders who will follow the majority, who support public education, not treat it like a burdensome nuisance. I thank the board for their time and their service.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Yes.
Thank you. Stephen Bader, 7 River Street, speaking just for myself for a change.
That's enough.
That's enough. When I first saw the agenda, I have to let you know I was somewhat incensed because I thought the regime was changing a little too dramatically and that you were limiting public comment to just that first opening session. Your explanation tonight, Mr. Dane, indicates that you will take public comment in the context of subjects that come up during the meeting. I think that's actually an improvement. And so instead of complaining, I'm going to say thank you.
That's an improvement.
But I just want to make sure that the public.
I guess that was a comment I was making. I shouldn't have even commented
Yeah.
on that, but I appreciate your understanding.
Thank you. I think engagement and involvement by citizens in town is what we want more of, not less of. So, thank you.
Thank you. You have 2 minutes and 37 seconds left.
Sorry.
I said you have 2 minutes and 37 seconds left.
Myself.
Save it for next time. Anybody else? No?
Tanya, you can go ahead.
Thank you. Hi. Yes, I was also, as you know, Tanya Galo, 62 Prescott Road. I was also puzzled by the change in the public comment, although I think it is definitely an improvement to have public comment in the beginning. Mr. Dane, you said to give people a chance to speak on agenda items, but then later you said you'll take agenda comments later, which is great. Is this something that you will do on a continuing basis, allow people to speak after agenda items? And my other comment, which would be great, my other comment is on a different issue. It's about Hanscom Field. I again would urge the select board to make sure that you discuss seriously, you consider seriously sending a letter to Governor Healy and asking her to stop the project. And I also ask whoever is appointed as a HATS member to please do the same at HATS. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So there's my question about your policy going forward about public comment. And thank you.
Thank you.
So that's going to be part of our agenda item a little bit when we assign liaisons, I think.
Yeah, no, I meant about the public comment. Is there going to be public comment allowed in general at meetings during agenda items? Is that what Mr. Dane has in mind?
I think you want to clarify that public comment at certain agenda items will be still up to your discretion. And it will be, I'm assuming it will be controversial or high interest topics, not every single, not some of the more routine
things
votes.
like, yes.
Right. But it's going to be up to you, I guess.
Who else is going to?
That's right.
It's always up to the chair, but it's just like, it was confusing to read on the current agenda that comments should be limited to items not on the agenda. And at the same time, Mr. Dane said that it gives people a chance to speak on the agenda as a policy to have public comment in the beginning. So I just want to make sure that that is also an option or to speak on agenda items. And I'm just clarifying he's giving us a gift by allowing this public comment in the first place, putting it in the beginning of the meeting in the second place. But I just want to make sure that people will have a chance to speak on agenda items if they want to.
Thank you. Thank you.
Henry, I think this
okay.
is a really good example that Tanya just brought up. We do have an agenda item later about liaisons, and I've requested to be the Hanscom liaison. So I was going to make a comment about it at that time about it that has to do with what Tanya said. So should I wait until we get to that item
I
or?
don't know what it is you want. I don't.
Well, it's very quick. I just agree with Tanya.
I think that whatever it is, it's I want to make it clear that we're not going to get into back and forth with people who make public comments
Correct.
initially, because that then opens up
Correct.
kind of whole new areas of discussion that are not on the agenda and people don't expect to have discussed.
Right.
So I think we're going to have to use our judgment at what point
Okay.
we're going to talk about the stuff that
Okay.
we're deciding on.
I'll wait until we get to that item. Thank you.
Mark, I wanted to just repeat the fact that I extended to you a hearty welcome as a member of the board. And you'll have to stay after.
I'll try not to make such interesting entrances in the future. I deeply apologize.
Was it the change in the hour that confused you?
Yes.
Well, okay, now you will not be confused in the future. What I am trying to do in terms of moving the starting time earlier and to hopefully have things more ready for action of the board, that we may be able to keep the scope of the meeting within reasonable bounds and not be sitting here at 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night. Not because it isn't worth the time, but it's wearing on everybody.
Okay. Well, let's see how that works out.
I'm in favor of civilized discourse, but civilization fades away very rapidly at late hours. Okay, so
Okay. And I apologize again.
no, so you missed the public comment, and now
You have two
There's
more.
we do. Oh,
Carla
okay.
and Pam, we're gonna.
Go ahead, Carlin.
Thank you. Carlin Reed, 83 With Sand. My compliments to the town manager's office, Megan, because you folks were kind enough to post the 2023 town manager weekly reports, which I find very instructive and very useful. Thank you very much. That's it.
And then Pamela Dritt.
Pamela, 13 Concord Green. Thank you for allowing comments. I appreciate also you're allowing public comments on important issues before you have taken the vote and it's too late. And I really appreciate the opportunity to do that. And I also would like to request that you make on the website, whether it makes it into the weekly packet or not, all public correspondence that's aimed at the board, as in the open public meeting laws require, instead of only some. I know we can always get it by talking to the town staff and asking, but if we don't know a letter has come in, we can't know to ask for it.
Thank you. This is more a procedural issue, and I'd like to comment on that. And that we have discussed with the town manager's office, setting up a portion of the website where all correspondence that comes in will be posted so that members of the public can just go on the town website and see everything. And even if it isn't in the meeting package. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And it looks like we have one more.
We have
Adrian?
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great, thank you very much. First of all, thank you for having this via Zoom. I really appreciate it. I'm immunocompromised and I don't know when I'm going to feel safe to do certain things. I would have loved to come down to town hall to meet you all, and hopefully someday I will. I'll try to keep this short and sweet. This is my first time actually calling into town hall. I hope to do so more in the future and be more involved. But my reason for commenting is I am against the Hanscom Field expansion of the hangars and the private jets. I just wanted to make you aware of it since there are other meetings coming up of it. You may hear other comments. I hope so too. I don't see any national security interest. I don't see the economic benefit since it goes to the top 100th of 1%. I just can't see it. I've lived here almost all my life, and I do not wish to see 3 times the air traffic going over my house as it is. So thank you for listening. I appreciate the work that you do.
Before you sign up, could you give us your address? We see
Sure.
your name on the screen.
Yep, 253 Peter Spring Road.
Good, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, are we ready to move on to the consent agenda?
Yes.
I have, I would like to make a small change to the minutes for April 3rd
Okay.
on page 3. Are you with me, Shannon?
Yep.
Okay. This third to last paragraph, we're talking about, Mr. Carr's asked a question about, will it be time consuming to review any applications? And the last sentence says, the towns can implement their own regulations regarding how frequently residents' applications must be reviewed over time. And I'd like to take that word overtime out because it implies we need overtime to do that, to process the applications. And that's
Right,
not,
that's not what
that's not what he's saying. So let's just take out that word overtime. Thank you.
This is Linda. I would also like to make a minor correction on the April 10th minutes on page 4, where we're talking about Minuteman technical update. In the 5th paragraph, it says Chair Johnson, and the sentence begins with Chair Johnson, as they were able to get out of their response to contribute. It was missing the words out of.
Okay.
One thing I should mention,
You're right.
in the future, we're going to work to get the agenda and the meeting packet out a week before the meeting. Therefore, members of the board will have the opportunity to make these corrections in advance of the meeting so that we don't have to stop and deal with them as part of the consent agenda. Any other comments on the consent agenda?
Okay.
Is there a motion to?
Yes. Move to approve the consent agenda with the 2 changes to the minutes discussed.
Second.
I'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Ackerman,
Aye.
Ms. Escobedo,
Aye.
Mr. Dane,
Aye,
Mr. Howell,
Aye.
and myself, Mary Hartman, aye.
thank you. Next item on the agenda is the town manager's report, which is in the package.
Hey. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Megan Zamudo. I'm the deputy town manager. And folks can find this weekly operations report on the town website. Under the town manager page on the left side, you'll see town manager reports. And there's a weekly update that covers various departments weekly. A few highlights. Every 10 years, Concord negotiates a renewal of the cable franchise agreement. So they've been hosting 3 in-person focus groups to gather input. And there was also a survey to gather input. There's an entry from our new economic vitality manager, Mimi Graney, who's talking about her first efforts here in town and some of her priorities, including building a business database, working on food truck permitting, and going door to door to many businesses to introduce herself.
Great.
In the police department, we have Officer Brady and Fitzgerald successfully completed a 2-week NEMLEC motorcycle operator school, and Officers Lacour and Olansky completed Cobweb bicycle officer school. So congratulations to them. For the Council on Aging, it's good to know that May is Older Americans Month. So they're planning several activities there. In the health division, they're busy working on pool inspections, inspecting summer camps, and also working on the Concord food truck ordinance and working on figuring out how to efficiently inspect and permit those trucks. They're also planning a part-time, they're also posted a part-time sanitary inspector position. And we're looking to fill that as soon as possible. In the planning office, the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail paving has been completed. And we have started to work with on MBTA Community Zoning Initiative. We've received a grant for technical assistance to work with a consulting team to determine potential locations around the 2 commuter rail stations in town. And so that those efforts have begun. In natural resources, land manager Will Holden has begun mowing smaller fields and meadows on conservation land. The library has about 2.5 pages of effort of what they're working on. So they've been very busy. There's information about cookbook club, youth services, the children's library, and the Fowler Library about all different activities that are happening there. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Good. Thanks very much.
Question, comment. Thank you, Megan and Carrie, for reminding us about the survey for the Comcast franchise. I've been working on that, and I was shocked to find out this is a $63 million contract that we're negotiating with Comcast. This is a very large contract. We really want the public to weigh in. Please do the survey. We want to get a big response rate. And Megan, if you could do us a favor and have them send out another news and notices with the link for the survey, because it took me a while. I know it's on the flyers, but I didn't have the flyer with me, so I had to mess around finding it. So yeah, everybody please do the survey and have all your friends. Even if you don't have Comcast, we want you to do the survey. Thank you.
Okay, that's the town manager's report. So the next item on the agenda is the seasonal outdoor restaurant seating applications. I would.
Who presents that?
Hmm?
Who presents that?
Well, I would assume the applicants would present them.
I think I would be presenting for them in this case. I don't think they're here.
Maybe it's because it says 6:45 and it's not even 6:30, so maybe they're still coming. But Carmen is here if you want to.
So,
Well,
you mind being a filler, Carmen?
Sure.
And we'll see if they come at 6:45 or whether we have to present ourselves. So, thank you, Carmen, and welcome to the select board.
Thank you.
And thank you for running a town meeting for us.
Maybe send a microphone in Carmen's direction.
Okay. Thank you very much. Hello, Carmen Reese, town moderator. So a few things. We did do a survey. Unfortunately, an exit survey of town meeting attendees to see how ask the various questions about the conduct of town meeting. And so there were some specific questions and also a space for a narrative in case there was something we hadn't asked that people wanted us to be aware of. Unfortunately, we didn't have that survey ready on Sunday, so it was distributed on Monday, and it has been available on the Monday of town meeting, and it has been available online. So we've had maybe 50 responses, but not a lot. There were upwards of 700 people in attendance at annual town meeting at Sunday's session, and just about 400, a little short of 400 on Monday. So that's not a great survey return for the number of people that we believe attended, that we know attended town meeting, but there's still time. So we haven't closed the survey window. So for anybody who's listening at home, you can find that survey on the town meeting page. And we certainly would love to have more comments.
Of course, the people you want to hear from are a lot of the people who weren't there.
Well, that could be, sure. Yes, yes. Although many of the questions relate to the conduct of the meeting itself, so they wouldn't be able to answer those. But they might have some narrative comments, certainly. So one question that we asked was about where the best sources of information are for people to get information about town meeting in advance, and we gave them several options, including social media, posters around town, direct mail, website, et cetera. And the two most popular places were the town website and the Concord Bridge. So those had the strongest embracement of places where people would go to get their information, best places to get information to them. We asked whether some feedback that we had this year was that we use a lot of paper, and the finance committee is large and goes to everyone's house along with the warrant. And one question was, should we do some of this electronically? And one of the questions that we asked is whether folks would like to receive a postcard with a QR code to download the finance committee report instead of a printed copy of the report. Separate question whether that would comply with our bylaw. But it was about 50-50 people who would prefer to get a postcard with a QR code and people who want the paper copy. So that's there for future consideration. There were some comments about the venue in the narrative comments, some complaints about the availability of restrooms. And that's been true in the past. If you're in the auditorium, it's pretty short on the capacity of restrooms on that side of the building, and the larger restrooms are on the other side by the gymnasium, and there are more restrooms upstairs. And we didn't have any signage to let people know where they could go. And there were complaints about long queues and supplies being out and the restrooms being less than tidy. So we'll take that up with the schools. A lot of complaints about how cold the building was on Sunday. We'll address that next year too. And there was a comment that we should have had more water available for attendees. And there are bubblers where people can refill their own water bottles. But, in the past, we have had these big urn things full of water, and those got overlooked this year. So we'll make a note of that for next year. There were some technical comments, including some people had difficulty finding the Minuteman Network live stream. They couldn't figure out where it was hidden on the website. And there were also some complaints that there were glitches in the broadcast, that it dropped several times during town meeting. So I have already had a debriefing session with town staff, and we didn't have those comments at that point. So we'll revisit and see if we can figure out what happened there. There were a couple of suggestions that we go back to thinking about electronic voting at town meeting, particularly given how long it takes us to count a vote when we have to count a vote. And there were complaints about the readability of PowerPoint slides, especially where they had charts or maps, and the print was so little, you just could not figure out what was going on there. And there was a request that if they aren't going to be readable on the screen, we need to have paper copies of anything that's on the screen and not really readable. There were some comments about scheduling. Holding town meeting on a Sunday was actually a recommendation of the 1995 town meeting committee, town meeting study committee that was formed and issued a report. And it's something that we started during COVID for the purpose of doing town meeting during daylight hours, because we wanted to be able to be outside. And in our first, the initial feedback we got about Sundays was that people liked that and wanted to stick with it. But this time around, we got a couple complaints that, particularly for people with families, was not convenient in the middle of a Sunday to try and go to town meeting and find something to do with your small kids. And although there's gratitude expressed for the childcare that's offered by the town at town meeting, if you're under 5, not every kid who's under 5 is going to do well in a giant gymnasium with a host of other kids. So it seemed that people with particularly small ones found that it was not really a good option for them, and they kept their kids with them in the hall. And there was a request that we take significant issues and put them closer to the start of the meeting. That's kind of a perennial thing. Everyone would like their issue to be at the start of the meeting. So that's a hard one to fulfill, but I think there was a lot of interest this year in Article 17, which was the K-8 school budget. And there was a feeling that it took us quite a long time to get to that for people who had come with a keen interest in that article. So I'm not sure what action there is to take there, because it doesn't matter what you put first and what you put last. You cannot make all the people happy because something has to go last and something has to go in the middle. So that is, I convey that for what it's worth. There were a lot of comments about process. Debate's too long. Certain people dominate the conversation. People shouldn't be allowed to speak twice at a microphone. And then there were, we have had for many years a not insignificant minority of folks in town who are not happy with open town meeting as our form of government, and feel that we should either move to a representative town meeting, or there's a lot of folks who would really like us to be able to do open town meeting remotely with everyone voting at home or everyone voting at the polls. And of course, neither of those is an option for us under state law in Massachusetts. And that's putting aside the question of whether town meeting is the town's legislature, and theoretically it is engaged in deliberation on choices and policies and budgets. And it's pretty hard to have deliberations if you aren't all together talking about things. A vote at the polls is not the same thing as deliberation. That is certainly true. That said, there were many comments that people felt that many people, those who don't like to drive at night, those with small kids, those with job schedules, those with travel schedules, just can't get there, and they feel disenfranchised. And there is a complaint that there is a feeling that too small a percentage of the town's voters are making significant decisions that impact the entire town through town meeting, and that a broader cross-section of the community should be able to participate in those decisions. So for us, there are only two alternatives open to us to open town meeting. One is a representative town meeting, and the other is changing to a city council and a mayor or a strong town manager system. Those are the only two options we have other than open town meeting. And we have studied this question in the past. Most recently, the town governance study did not do an exhaustive study of procedures at town meeting, but it looked at the question whether it would still recommend open town meeting as our form of legislature in Concord. That report was issued in 2014. That committee was appointed in 2013. It held 32 open meetings, 2 public forums, and 2 public hearings on its preliminary recommendations. And its recommendation, the report is still on our website, and its recommendations were that we stick with open town meeting, but there were recommendations that certain tweaks be considered. And there are tweaks which would require special legislation, and they did not have a majority. They didn't have a consensus on the committee or a majority of support, but there were advocates for these questions, and there was a specific recommendation that the select board take up at some point the question of whether we should seek special legislation to create a mechanism for, on very particular kinds of articles, a subsequent vote at the polls to confirm the town meeting vote, which would, and if it were inconsistent with the town meeting vote, it would supersede the town meeting vote. The same model as we have for Proposition 2.5 overrides. So that, that was a recommendation. It's there. It has never been taken up by the select board. And the next previous study was issued in 1996. So we're going back 10 years and then another 20 years. But so the last two studies in 30 years have pretty resoundingly come back with, yes, there's a significant minority that would rather do something else, but the overwhelming majority is still in support of having an open town meeting. And it's certainly true that those other two forms, a representative town meeting or a city council, mean less direct involvement by voters.
So you always have a significant minority who would rather do something else. But when things go to the polls, you do not get a significantly larger number of people going and voting at the polls than you have coming to town meeting.
It runs about 25%. About 25% of the people who show up at the polls show up at town meeting. And the town of Andover actually just did a 20-year longitudinal study looking at this question, the question of whether the demographic of, because basically open town meeting is a representative town meeting, but the representatives are self-selected, right? They're the people who chose to go. And so the assumption has been that, well, those are special interest groups. They don't look like the town at large. They look like something else. What Andover found in their review was that the demographics looked just like the town in terms of how many registered Republicans, percentage of Republicans versus Democrats, ages, voting precincts, a whole bunch of other parameters that they looked at, which is interesting. It doesn't.
There's really kind of, I think, two separate issues here. Both of them are important, but aren't necessarily congruent with each other. One is the how representative the town meeting is in terms of reflecting the views of the town, and the other is the sense of community that comes from bringing people together in one place where they are with other people from the town. And I think that second one is as important as the first, and we have lost a lot of the resources that do bring people together on a face-to-face basis. One of the most remarkable ones was the sanitary landfill, which we used to call the dump, where everybody was on Saturday morning. And
maybe we should have the drop-off swab off more often.
Well, you see, no, actually, not to get too deep into this, that has become so formalized now that you have to make a reservation and pay in advance, and you stay in your car, so that the idea of standing around the dump with your dump. But anyway, we're not going to bring the dump back, I don't think, although we might have a transfer station, which might have this similar effect. But I think preserving the community that exists because of town meeting is a very important thing. And even if you try to make the democratic features of it more prominent, it would have an unintended consequence of further removing people from contact with each other.
Well, those seem to me to be all good observations. I've always felt very strongly that a sense of community is one of the, it's really one of the characteristics of Concord's annual town meeting, and it's an important part of it. The two questions that I would raise, well, three questions that I would raise for the select board. One is, we have the annual town survey that is a vehicle for us to ask questions not only about town services, but also about town meetings. So it might be that there would be some questions about town meeting that you would like to add to that town survey. So that's just a thought. And the other one is, it's been 10 years since the last time we looked at the question of what form of legislature we should have in town. And certainly the demographics here are fluid and they do change over time. And certainly technology is different today than it was 10 years ago. And we've sure learned a lot through, living through a pandemic. So both of the last studies were formed by the select board after the select board received the impetus from a citizen petition at annual town meeting. So I would raise for you the question of whether the select board would like to think about it, whether you might consider that it's time to think about it again. Is there, I know what I'm hearing. I can never tell whether the subset of people I'm hearing from, I don't know how much of the community they represent. And when I was in your seats, I always felt that way there too, that it was really hard to tell what the people how much of the community was the sentiment that you were hearing reflective of. But that's one thing you could do in the survey. You could simply ask the question whether it is time to form a study committee to look at the question and think about it. And then the third thing I would raise is just those, we have implemented a lot of the recommendations that were made in both of these studies, the 96 one and the 2013 one. If you go back to the 2013 one and look at the suggestions for the select board to think about, those might be things that you want to think about. They would be a kind of, kind of a hybrid. You keep open town meeting and everything that's good about it, but for some of these more tectonic kinds of changes that might happen at annual town meeting, where each side is completely persuaded that that the majority of the community feels the way they do if they lost, right? Okay. So I think about the bottle ban, which was before town meeting 5 times to either pass or rescind. And this was our second time with leaf blowers. And I'm guessing it's not going to be our last. So it's an interesting question whether you have something that's of high public interest like that, whether you would want to have a follow-up vote at the polls. It was built into certain things like the affordable housing, the senior means tested property tax exemption. That article built in a vote at the polls subsequently. And I don't think there's any question about the authority of the select board to do that. But it would be worth looking at what the outer parameters are of your legal authority to do you have any data from the Minuteman Network about how many people live stream the meeting while it is going on? I don't. Do you know whether?
I don't, but I'm thinking it's something Jason would be able
Well,
to
that might be that might be useful information to see whether people they still can't participate.
Right. They can't
They
vote.
can't participate, but they can decide when to appear and when their attendance is not relevant to what they are in favor of or against. So, of course, and that was a debate that took place very early in town meeting when there was a question about whether it should be broadcast live on the high school radio station so that people would come and go based on what they heard on their radio. There might be things that could be done that might make it a little bit more interesting.
Well, I think I'm glad you bring up the streaming question, because it's clear from the surveys that it's good that we have 3 different ways that people can tune in. There's the cable channel, there's the radio station, and there's live streaming. And when the live streaming dropped, there were some people who went to their TV sets, and there were some people who turned the radio on because they no longer have cable. So it's good to have suspenders and belts as well as safety pins.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, of course.
Carmen, the idea to go to the polls after a town meeting vote for some articles, right? Did you say that Andover was addressing that same question and found that the demographics? No. What did Andover study exactly?
Well, Andover did an exhaustive study on whether they wanted to continue with an open town meeting form of government versus becoming a representative town meeting, where they have a very large population. They could easily have chosen, as for example, Framingham did and Amherst did, to become a city instead. And but one of the things that they were hearing is the same as what we're hearing, is that it's a very small group that isn't representative of the town at large. So they undertook to see if they could figure out, if they could get some data that would help them figure out whether that was accurate or inaccurate. And they found that the demographics tracked pretty well with the demographics of people who showed up at town meeting. We know this because they're registered voters, so we know who came, who checked in. And then you can look at various things about those people to see if they look overall like the composition of the town. And they concluded, yes, they did. They also looked at the overlap between people who would show up at the polls and people who showed up at town meeting.
Yes, that's what.
And there was a lot of overlap, so that most people who showed up at town meeting also showed up at the polls, not vice versa necessarily. But at least 25% of the people who choose regularly to participate in the democratic process by coming to the polls, also they came to town meeting to participate in those decisions. So the conclusion in Andover was that we've got a big enough segment of the population that is actively involved in making zoning bylaw changes and passing the budget.
We have that data available. If it's
we do. Yes, we just haven't ever looked at it.
Because we know who casts ballots at town elections, whether it be by mail or in person, and we have a list of the people who come to town meeting each year.
Yes, we have exactly the same information that Andover has that they use to go back and do this study.
Can I ask another question? So I also want to emphasize something I thought I heard you say, which is that if we were to look at other forms of governance for the town, those that are available to us under state law would be either a city, which is a city council, which would be less involvement by,
yes,
okay, or a representative town meeting, which again is less,
yes,
okay, and what we're looking at is there's this tweak we can do now, which is to ask for a poll vote after a town meeting vote that would maybe get more involvement. But as far as making substantive changes that are available to us now under state law, that's not going to increase public engagement.
No, and I think that we might need special legislation to be able to do the polls.
Okay.
Good. So, I mean, we can do it in the isolated situation, like a Proposition 2.5 situation, and no one ever questioned whether we had the authority to do it on the senior means tested property tax exemption. We just did it. But it would have been an interesting question if it had passed a town meeting and failed at the polls, which one of those votes was binding.
Okay.
Terry?
Okay, so I have a few comments. So first of all, thank you for bringing up this topic. I read some letters to the editor that pretty much blamed the select board or the moderator for not making town meeting more accessible or just getting rid of town meeting. And I was dismayed, but your attitude of presenting it factually is much better than the reaction that I had. So listening to all of this, I'm thinking it might be good in our town meeting warrant or in the bridge, next year to do just a little bit of education, like a paragraph about why do we have to have town meeting? Why can't we do it remotely? Why can't we do these tweaks? We can do it, but it will need special legislation. Or we could do representative town, these are our options. This is what we can do and what we can't do. Just a paragraph or two explaining to folks who are new to the process, I think would be helpful. And my second comment is about the survey. I'm a person who always fills out that survey, but I didn't this year. And I just realized now I didn't even see this. Was the survey a hard copy there?
It was a hard copy on Monday night. Yes. It was
Only
on-
Monday.
Only Monday. It wasn't there on Sunday.
So what happened was, and I suspect this happened to other people, when I went in Sunday, I took all the paperwork. And when I went in Monday, I skipped that table because I had all the paperwork already. So,
except that you didn't, because some of the paperwork from Monday night didn't go out till Monday.
yeah, well, that's interesting. So, okay. So that's the comment that I have.
Yeah.
And then finally, there was one article that almost came off the consent calendar for the sewer, capital, I think it was.
There were two articles that had where voters, a handful of voters,
Right.
Not as many as we needed, expressed
Right.
an interest in
So
full debate.
this-
One was free cash, and the other was the sewer fund.
Right.
Yeah.
So
There were 7 people, I think,
yes,
who raised
there
their
were
hand,
7
not the 10.
people. So it was close to 10. So I decided to go and talk to some of those people and find out what is their issue with the sewer. And I was surprised to find out that the biggest issue is communication. They just wanted to have public discussion about the whole, they want a plan. So I would really recommend that the select board follow up and have on our agenda soon a discussion about what our sewer plan has been and what it is going forward, because there are citizens out there asking those questions.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, Mark?
Just a couple of comments, picking up on what Terry just said. I would encourage the boards and commissions, for example, Public Works, which is responsible for the sewer, to host and frankly publicize their activities with relation to this. And, sort of to the point of how do we efficiently use our time as a select board. There are really, important and useful issues that are coming up at the Light Board, at the Public Works Commission, and there'll be, I'm quite sure, very interesting discussions at the Planning Board as we try to deal with MBTA communities. And I think the public should be encouraged to go to those boards that have those responsibilities rather than having everything have to necessarily come to this forum, because we're obviously observers and have our own role to do, but we're not primary on those things. So when I see something like that coming off, I appreciate that sometimes the moderator does pick an enterprise fund to highlight, and that's worth doing. However, I also think that it makes sense for those boards to highlight that. And of course, the Finance Committee hearings, although they're lengthy, also serve that purpose of giving an opportunity for people to raise their questions about those things. So I'd encourage that. Just moving on, as far as town meeting goes, I'd really like to compliment town staff. This was the first town meeting in several years that's begun to feel normal. The list of items that you ran down, Carmen, is a familiar list to me. Having helped to host town meeting for a number of years and perennially challenging, I think. But this particular staff, I think, was faced with trying to meet some expectations that many of them had never actually experienced before. And so I think before we necessarily rush out to make a lot of changes right now, I'd like to, hope that we're moving in the direction of more normal town meeting procedures. I personally appreciated the longer session of Sunday, but I'm not really a big fan of Sunday. I like the evening meetings a little bit more, and I think that breaks up, but there's a lot of startup and setup time that goes along with that, and it's difficult on staff as well. So it's all by way of saying, I think that there's a great number of issues that can be discussed around town meeting. Finally, for those people that are inclined to suggest an alternative, actually suggesting an alternative would be a good idea. I noticed that comments, particularly in the paper, around getting rid of open town meeting rarely ever actually suggest what the proposed alternative would be. And so that's a kind of a multiple choice question. And my guess is that if we really polled people about it, and I like the idea of putting it in the annual town survey, we'd probably find that there's not a lot of consensus on what alternative would be preferable.
Well, one thing we be sure of is there are no perfect systems.
Yeah.
So the question is, what is the least imperfect that is the best fit for us?
Mhm.
And they all come with problems. So.
Mhm. Thank you very much. And is there anything that we should really be thinking about doing in order to move this discussion forward? I mean, I shudder to think of forming another committee or task force. Well,
I think, as Carmen and Mark just said, maybe we should add one or more questions to the citizen satisfaction survey. I would just do it a little bit differently than Mark just said. If you just list open town meeting, representative town meeting, city council, I think you're going to have to put in a little explanation. A lot of people don't know what's involved with those things. So I think you have to put in a few sentences explaining each one if you want people to opine on it.
All right. Well,
we can do that for now.
Maybe the time to think
So,
about.
Henry, this is Linda. May I just add a comment?
Linda, go ahead.
Yes. Given that we're walking up to the 250th celebration, I've heard some suggestions about perhaps educating the public a little bit more about some of the issues involved, and certainly putting it in the context of the 250th coming up would add another dimension to the discussion, I think. Thank you.
I believe one of the programs that's being proposed is a reproduction of one of the town meetings that took place before April 19th.
Oh, really cool. Wow.
With reenactors and scripts and everything like that.
Oh, wow. Is there an audition? I want to be in that.
You hope they're not typecast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The women. There were no women.
But maybe the time for us to think about this with more sense of urgency would be when the board is considering how to order the items on the town meeting warrant, and which I think may have some real impact, especially I think one of the crazy ideas I have is to have the town meeting warrant order be chosen at random on the spot. Pick the items out of a hat and not broadcast it live, so that people would be committed to participating in a whole range of issues instead of being focused on a particular issue.
There are communities that do that. Personally, I find it hard to see how that would be responsive to the complaints that we're getting or the concerns. But the last thing I will note is I would urge you to think about whether it's time to appoint another committee. And I know how difficult it is to staff and supervise umpty-ump committees, but every 10 years is probably not that not that heavy a lift to take up this question and make sure that we're still reflecting the desire of the community. And I am going to send you I'm working with town staff right now on a draft schedule for the annual town meeting and election calendar for next year. And I would ask you if we could add that to maybe your next meeting, because the sooner we get this in place, the easier it is for reserving the rooms at the schools, letting every board and committee know how they need to schedule their own.
I think that our next agenda is probably pretty packed because the more routine issues have kind of just not been dealt with because of the town meeting and the transition,
Understood.
So I would prefer to maybe put it out one more meeting.
June 5th.
Okay.
5th.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So Shannon, you'll just let me know what that date is. Okay,
We
great.
we do have our meetings are,
Could be June 5th.
is it June?
June 5th. June 5th would be our next meeting
June 5th?
after the 22nd.
June 5th.
June 5th. Okay. And Shannon, I will send you both of the reports that I mentioned so that you can share them with the board. Okay.
Comments from the public when you guys raising the hand?
Let's move on. Because now we filled the time and the people with the outdoor dining have not appeared. And so let's deal with
They're on Zoom.
Mr. Chair, I don't think that, I apologize. I don't think we specifically asked the applicants to attend this evening. It was an oversight. So if you'd like, I'm happy to speak to the review process, or we could, at your pleasure, put it on a future agenda.
well, I don't see any problem. I mean, these are really very similar to the one-day license process. And they're routine and they have been they've been approved and exercised in previous years. And so I think in general, we would expect that something like this, the applicant would appear, but we can proceed, especially since we have the staff review and the memo that tells us that everything is in order for both of those.
That
And
we've
we
read.
might just, I don't know, are these are these formal hearings that have been advertised?
No, these aren't formal hearings.
Okay. So, is there any, shall we just see whether there's any discussion or
Right.
questions that people have about these?
It went through, I'm sorry, but Mr.
You want
Chair.
to just
Sure.
take 2 minutes to describe each one?
Absolutely. So we have 80th Row and Nosh, and both of these restaurants have gone through this process before. I believe 80th Row has the same exact setup as last year. Nosh has the same setup that they did in kind of the beginning year of the pandemic, which I believe was 2020. Both restaurants have to keep the same occupancy, even though they're adding outdoor seating. So for Nosh and for 80th Row, that means they're reducing their seats inside, adding additional seats outside. And both applications have been vetted through our internal review team, which includes planning, building, engineering, highway and grounds, health, police, and fire, and the select board's office with Shannon and myself. So there are no problems with these ones. We did work with them to make sure that they were abiding by our zoning bylaws regarding parking counts. And so we were able to work with them to make adjustments so that their applications were compliant with our local laws.
So if there are no questions or comments in this, I just entertain a motion to approve these two applications.
I thought the packets were complete. I thought the packets were great. Answered all my questions.
So do we have a motion?
I do. I'll move that the select board approve the applications for 80 Thoreau and Nosh by the Concord Market with the proposed requirements by town of our departments as outlined in the memorandums to the board included in the meeting packet.
Second.
I'll take a roll call vote. Ms. Ackerman?
Aye.
Mr. Dane?
Aye.
Ms. Escobedo?
Aye.
Mr. Howell?
Aye.
Myself, Mary Hartman, aye.
Thank you. All right, now we've done with the annual town meeting and now we the next item is to adopt the timeline for the town manager's evaluation. And in our packet, we have a schedule that has been proposed by town staff, and I think is routine.
I have a question. When it says here that we're going to complete the forms, is that the forms that Matt designed?
Correct.
Okay, the spreadsheet.
Yep.
Got it.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question also. Oh, well, I guess, now I'm remembering. So we need to decide, I guess, by next week, who,
Meeting.
Yes.
right, who, will put all the forms together. I won't be at the meeting next week.
Actually, it says May 15th
Yeah,
that we
that's
selected.
today.
Yeah.
Today.
There was some sort of weird save glitch where I had updated the memo to say the 22nd, but in the version that I sent to you guys, it still said the 15th. And the one I put on the website, it says the 22nd. But Henry and I thought it didn't make a huge difference in the timeline if that was decided today or next
The other
week.
dates are unchanged.
Correct.
What do you want to do?
It doesn't really, if the completed forms don't come in until June 26th,
Yeah.
we have who it is going to get them. We have plenty of time to decide that. So unless you want to decide now, well,
I just want to hear people's thoughts on it. I think I would, go along with whatever process we have, but I guess just in the past, we do have to comply with the open meeting law, so it's a little bit tricky. It does put, like, if we all sent it to Shannon, for example, one of Shannon's predecessors preferred not to receive them because it put him in an awkward position with his boss at the time. So it's just a consideration. It could go to the chair. It could go to the clerk. It could go to Shannon. There's lots of ways to do this that are in compliance with the open meeting law.
Is Shannon uncomfortable?
No, I'm not uncomfortable, especially I don't need to be reviewing the content that is sent. I can just save them in one place, compile them for the review.
Well, compiling them, maybe we need to figure out what that means. Are there numbers on there that has to take an average?
There's 5 different categories.
Right. There was like exceeds expectations, meets expectations.
Spectrum.
So do we want compiling? Do we want to see an average from everybody, or what are we looking for?
I also just wonder if this part of the conversation is better suited for when Carrie is here. If she had any thoughts on what compiling.
Well, it's our scores though. So I think we should decide as far as her input into the self-evaluation. Yeah, we should definitely have her. But as far as compiling the scores we give on this spreadsheet that Matt Johnson created, I think an average would be fine.
Well, just to clarify, he drafted it and we all voted it. So it's
right.
Yeah, okay.
No, I didn't mean to. No, we're
right. And I don't care what our process is, as long as it's clear and we all agree on it.
Sure. Then I'm okay with an average. What do you?
Well, for tonight, I guess the question is, are we voting to have a designee by the 22nd? And why wouldn't we just have all the materials sent directly to that designee once we decide who it is?
We are, but what is the designee going to do to compile? Do they take the average?
The discussion about who it is related to, I guess, what the expectation is about what that person will do. Okay, so if it has any kind of substantive content, then I think it probably ought to be a member of the board other than me.
Yeah. Okay.
For which I would be grateful.
And just for clarification, being new on the board, I'm not going to participate at this level.
So that makes you neutral, doesn't it?
It does.
Well, actually, that brings up a good
So-
point.
that's
What
what
we've
we're
done
doing.
in the past is the new member participates in the part about setting the new goals,
Oh, right.
but not on the past
Well,
performance.
actually, I think what we're saying now is because Mark hasn't been here and he's neutral, he might be the right person to actually compile the information
Oh.
and the qualitative comments as well.
I didn't know I was volunteering, but
You walked-
that's,
you
I could
walked
see how you
into a-
can get
you
into
walked
that.
into a trap.
But we are also getting input from Mr. Johnson.
Correct.
Because-
Yes.
Because he was here for the program year. Okay.
I think we've just.
Found our designee.
I think
So-
we found our designee.
So I would be, yeah, if it's simpler on staff, I'd be willing to be the receiver and do a compilation and keep you apprised of the process of compilation of
Thank
what
Good.
the
Do
options
we
are.
need a motion on that, or or is that just an administrative decision? It says
We can make-
select.
We can make a dual motion. We can move to point.
Point of order, please. I'm not sure that would be within the open meeting law for one of you to compile the information sent by the others. I think it needs to be an outside person that then distributes the information anonymously. You may want to check that with our town clerk who is here or with the, but I wonder about that.
Good. Thank you. Thank you for your comment.
Okay.
Go back to Shannon.
No,
Shannon can do it, couldn't she?
Well, I mean, if that's,
I think one member, we often have one member write a document and then other people can send comments only to that one member. Then we end up with one document. If there's
So
two.
this is Linda speaking. I do believe that the FAQ on the Attorney General's website addresses this specifically, and it may be worth our while to revisit that, in addition to talking to the town clerk.
Good. Well, let's make a decision that we would make if there is a open meeting law problem with the decision we make, we can then be governed accordingly. So let's just make the decision, and if it turns out that's problematical, we'll do something else.
Okay, I'd like to be clear. What are we deciding? We're deciding to select a designee by a certain day based on what we learned about open meeting law from the town clerk and the FAQ. And then we're also adopting this timeline moving forward. Are we doing both of those?
I thought so.
Okay.
I thought not all of those. I thought what we're doing is adopting the timeline
Right.
and designating the person called
Right.
for in the timeline.
That's what I thought too.
And
So that will be next meeting.
well, we could do it now.
Mr. Chair, I have some information on evaluations if you're interested in that. There's a question, may the individual evaluations of an employee be aggregated into a comprehensive evaluation? That's what we're talking about, right? Okay.
Mhm.
So members of a public body may create an individual evaluations and submit them for compilation into a master evaluation to be discussed at an open meeting.
Mhm.
As best practice to avoid the appearance of an improper deliberation, members should submit their evaluations to someone who is not a member of the public body, for example, an administrative assistant or executive secretary.
Okay.
Thank
Where
you.
an administrative assistant or executive secretary is not available for such a purpose, an individual member may receive and compile the evaluations. So you can decide either way, I think. In either event, once compiled, the aggregated evaluation may not be circulated to the quorum of the members prior to a meeting, for example, by email. The aggregated evaluation may only be distributed to a quorum of the members in one of two ways. One, at a properly noticed open meeting. Two, via public posting to a municipal website in a manner also available to members of the public, as long as paper copies are available. So even if the body posts the aggregated evaluation to a publicly available municipal website, a quorum of the members of the body may not discuss it outside of properly published.
Right.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Very good. Okay, so what I got from that is we should appoint Shannon to compile, right? But we should not discuss any compilation until we've outside of open meeting,
Right.
right?
Right. So as long as Shannon is comfortable, I think,
She said she was.
yeah, basically taking the averages is not,
Yeah, that's
you
fine.
know.
And it
okay.
shouldn't be distributed back until that open meeting.
That's right.
Right, in the packet.
Right.
Right. Okay, great.
Great. Do we want a motion?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I'm going to move that we appoint Shannon McAndrew as the designee to receive the completed forms from select board members and to approve the town manager evaluation timeline as included in the meeting packet.
Second,
Roll call vote. Ms. Ackerman,
aye.
Mr. Dane,
Aye.
Ms. Escobedo,
Aye.
Mr. Howell,
Aye.
myself, Mary Hartman, aye. Very good.
That was a close one, wasn't it, Mark?
Yeah, well,
Other one.
yeah, really.
Dodged the bullet there.
Okay. You owe us one. Okay, so that is, so the next item is the liaison designations. And before we get into that, I would just like to make some general remarks about my view on the relationship between the select board and the committees to which our members are being designated as liaisons. One of the remarkable features about our town government is the large number of committees that we have and the large number of people in total who serve on those committees. I think it's an important administrative issue as to how we relate to those committees, that we not make them that we make them a resource that contributes to the overall labor of our undertaking, and not absorb energy in order to manage them that is not repaid. I think it's also one of our most important responsibilities to make sure that as the policy-making body of the town, that we have that we have a relationship with those committees in which we can influence them in the direction of the policies that we have accepted. And so that it's very important. In fact, one of the most important things is who serves on those committees and what the relationship is that they have with the select board. And my feeling is that with that number of committees, it is not productive to expect members of the board to spend a lot of time attending meetings of committees with which they have a liaison relationship, even if it were possible, and it just is not possible with that number and the number of meetings. But I think that the time that should be spent by members of this board in being a liaison with a committee is to be a resource to the committee and to be a means of communication from the board to the chairs of those committees. That it's a very important part of our job to recruit people to serve on committees and not have them be necessarily self-perpetuating. And that we spend time in recruiting and interviewing candidates to serve on committees. And while it's been the attitude in the past that we have to solicit people to serve, I think it is also should be recognized that it is an honor and a privilege to serve on many of our committees. And so that I think that the time that people should spend as a liaison with a committee should be recruiting, should be to interviewing and to dealing with problems instead of going to meetings, checking on on minutes of the committees, looking at their agendas, looking for problems and making it clear to the chairs of the committees that we are available, that the person for them to talk to, if they have an issue, is their liaison who can bring their issues to the board. And that if we have issues with the committee, that the liaison is in contact with the board. We have taken step one. Shannon has created this book, which I think we have been struggling without for years, which is a compilation of the charges for all of the committees. And so that we now at least have an idea of what the committees are supposed to do based on their charges. Who appoints their members and for what terms, and whether or not over time the functions of those committees have changed out to go beyond or be different from what their charge originally called for. And there would be, as we've had in the recent years, the opportunity to update and change some of the charges to make it more appropriate. So having said that, I think that I see the job as liaison as being more representative and supporting than being what do you call it? An ex officio member of the committee on which they're the liaison.
Mhm.
And coincidentally, I think that does something very important for us, and that is it relieves, I think, a very heavy burden that sits on the shoulders of many of us who feel the obligation to attend 5 different committee meetings a week, whereas attending one is more of our own, is more than some of us can take. So having said that, I did the best that I could based on this is the spreadsheet of all the committees, which again was put together by Shannon, who did an amazing job of pulling together all this information, which gives us all the committees who appoints them, who their chair is, and the contact information for their chairs. And this, when we finalize, will go in the front of this book. And I am going to ask at the chairs meeting on Wednesday that they update their information for their committee and to, what can I say, express my view to them as to what I feel the relationship should be between the committees and the select board. So I don't know how we open up this.
I have a couple of questions from.
Who are we going to ask?
Okay, so first of all, thank you to Shannon for doing all of that. And we've had requests from the public, and when we are recruiting, that these charges all be on the website. So are they also all on the website?
In most cases, I would say that they're on the website. It would be a now separate task to go through and ensure that they're all on the website.
I know. Okay, well.
No, but it's totally understandable.
Yeah, but that's a great step.
But I thought you said there was a link to this.
So that's something that is within like our town manager's office filing that I would be able to share with you as select board members.
Okay.
Correct.
Oh, great.
Okay.
But now that they are all easily in one spot, it shouldn't be too hard of a task to go through the website and make sure they're all
that would be
on there.
great.
Well, I don't.
You've done all
think
this
they
work.
should be distributed one by one to all of the individual sites of the committees, or we could just have one tab on the website, which was called committee charges.
Yeah.
And then they just uploaded to that one. So anybody who
I
wants
think
to
you-
look,
yeah.
and in fact, that might be more useful because if somebody says, well, I'd like to be on a committee, but I don't know which it would be.
Right.
They could just scroll through them and see what appeals to them without having to go to.
Right.
Right.
6 or
That
8.
happens a lot when people say, oh yeah, I want to volunteer. And they're on the volunteer form where used to be called the green card. It would be great if there was a link so they could see right away. Yeah. What they're interested in.
Yeah, I'm sure we can.
And that would be a lot
Work that out.
easier than
Yeah.
kind of trying to have a uniform format for each committee's spot on the website,
Mhm.
which is a job. It
Right.
might be something for for when we've got nothing better to do.
And then
Used to call a rainy day project.
Yeah.
And then my second question is, Henry, you have that list there that Shannon put together.
Mhm.
And then we have the other list that was in the packet tonight. So,
That's obsolete now.
oh,
That list, that's something that I put together
Okay.
because we asked everybody to tell me what their preferences were for committee assignments. And so I tried to consolidate those requests.
right.
And that did not include many of the committees because there were many committees that nobody chose even as a
Right.
10th choice.
So my question is, what list are we looking at now for this
Yes.
discussion?
The one that
emailed it this
Shannon
afternoon.
is
Sent out this afternoon.
Distributed it this afternoon.
Oh, yeah, I didn't see it or anything.
No, so that's
I have a hard copy.
Is this your only copy, Henry?
no, I have, it's in my computer someplace.
Yeah, but.
I
well,
can
maybe we
just print
look-
a copy right now.
That might be good. I'm sorry. I didn't see that
Oh, well,
this afternoon. So,
we normally try to avoid that happening.
I could look on with you or
Well,
something.
here, it's nothing to look on with, because I mean, if
Is
every,
that,
huh?
is that the latest, really?
This
I don't
one?
see any highlights on the ones I got.
Oh, because it's color, this came out of a
Got
color
it.
Print
printer.
a couple, Shannon.
Okay.
What?
Um,
Can you print a couple?
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Are we all looking at the same thing now?
No.
I'm looking at it on my
That's right.
computer.
what
Okay.
what
What about
Janet's-
Linda? What about Linda? Do you have the latest version?
Linda?
I received one this afternoon from Shannon that
That's-
Henry
that's it.
had filled in names.
Yes.
Right.
I'm gonna go grab the printed copies.
I see.
So
Okay.
Henry, while she's getting the copies, this is Linda. Can I just comment on one thing? Well, a couple things, actually. I noticed that the Concord 250th executive committee was not on there, and that's your assignment. And I think that should be on this list.
It's on there. It's the first
Well,
one.
it may have gotten chopped
No,
off the
it's
top.
there. It's the first one.
line 2,
The very first one, Linda. At the top.
it's called the 2025 Executive Committee.
Maybe I'm not looking at the same list then.
So the file name
It's
was
on the very,
It's the very
Right.
first one.
row 2.
okay, that's not on, there it is. Okay, sorry.
So,
Yes, I see it. Sorry.
The current liaison, and this is the new
The
assignment.
right-hand column.
Okay.
Mhm. And is it your intention to go down this list?
I hope
this
not.
meeting? Okay.
I hope not. Maybe we should handle it the way they handle the consent agenda on the town meeting is if you have a hold or a question about any particular one, let's just deal with the questions or the comments. And I would hope that we could just resolve any issues fairly straight, pretty quickly.
Okay. I did have a
So,
question.
the reference to the state 250 commission, and we have appointed
Mike
former
Lawson,
select board member.
yes. But but that's
It's not a town committee.
It's not a town committee, and he's not really a liaison. He is an appointee.
Correct. But the select board appointed him.
That is correct.
So I'm just depending on how you want to handle this, Henry,
Yes.
there are items like that I think it's important for people to know who is currently holding those positions. And, for example, Ira Goldman is the current appointee to MBTA.
Passport.
Right.
That's right.
I think that under the current select board liaison, all those people are listed, or they may be in a different column, but I think there are all those
They're on here.
They're on here.
positions are there.
But
It's
what
not in
would-
the, okay.
This is a document, I think, just for the use of the select board. And then as far as publishing it on the select board's website, I'm assuming we'll use the same format we've used in the past, which is under each select board member, we'll have the committees, and then on the side, we'll have the outliers like Ira Goldman for Massport and Mark Giddings for the Hanscom Field Advisory, et cetera, et cetera. So I think this schedule we're looking at here is just for us.
Yeah, but I would like to comment about Hanscom. I do agree with several people in the public that this is a very serious issue this year. And I've been going to the meetings for Hanscom Field Advisory Committee. And I see here that I know that Mark is our voting representative.
Yeah.
But I would like to be the liaison. I've been going to the meetings anyway. I think it's important that a select person attend those meetings.
Got it.
Okay, thank you. And I would do the same with Massport if you want, because I think Massport.
Congratulations.
All right, great. I think it's very important that we.
I'm not saying that people should not go to meetings when appropriate.
No,
I'm
but
saying that
I'm not even liaison on them. But
Okay,
you're adding me now. You said
you're being added. Right?
excellent. Thank
That
you.
was the Massport Community Advisory.
Right, and the Hanscom Field.
Advisory.
Yeah.
In that same vein, I had indicated that I would like to continue with hats, again, because of the topic. On
Okay.
this list, I think Terry's name was inserted. So if she's going to cover the advisory committee, and I agree with her, I think that's a good move. I would like to continue to do hats.
Okay,
Is somebody keeping track of all this? Okay.
okay,
Sure,
and
yes,
then
yeah.
you and I will coordinate together. I know the first meeting coming up, I know I'm going to be missing anyway, the one on the
Yeah,
18th.
definitely.
So why don't we just agree to finalize this list with these amendments and changes that Shannon will take care of and update this schedule and then redistribute it? And then can we have a motion
Wait a minute.
to approve these liaison assignments?
I don't think we need a motion, but I do have a question. Shannon, the
Yes.
chairs for a lot of these committees are going to move
Yes.
now, right?
Yes.
So that's going to be a big job for you.
Yeah, I'm hoping with Henry's great announcement at the next chair's breakfast, we can hopefully get a lot of this turned over quickly.
Okay.
Can I make this request? It probably would be very helpful if you could attend
Oh,
the
yeah.
chair's
Yeah, I'll be
breakfast
there.
and to basically take notes on the
Yeah.
information that people give you. Because I'm
Yeah.
really very bad at like talking to people and writing down
Yeah, no
their
problem.
email addresses and being coherent.
Yeah, I already have had a lot of responses because in my invitation for the chair's breakfast, I said, I understand this is a transitionary period. Please let me know if your chair has changed, then I've already gotten several responses and have been able to update that.
And if we can trust you with the donuts, we can trust you with anything.
The reason I brought that up is that I intend to send an email to the chairs of the committees that I'm leaving and introduce the new
Well, that's a good idea.
liaison. So I'll copy you on that. That's why I wanted to know
Well,
who they are.
I agree that I think it's a really great idea for the liaison to communicate directly with the committee chair that they're relating to, and just to begin that relationship, and maybe even extend an invitation to have a cup of coffee with them and talk about their issues.
So you
Which I think would be more useful than going to one of their meetings at, because, it's kind of more, you can have a more, a more frank conversation with them about what their concerns are. So anyway.
Okay, so I apologize again. I hadn't seen this at all. And it looks really good, except there's one surprise that I didn't realize. I had not requested the Recreation Commission, but I did get assigned to that. And I'm just wondering, is somebody else better suited or more interested in taking that one?
Carrie, can I add to that? Because it may address what you're also asking. I was hoping that I would be able to continue to work with the CHCD, and maybe somebody could take the recreation, and then I could take the CHCD.
The Concord Housing Development Corporation, is that what you mean, Linda?
Yes, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed that had my name on it, and I didn't know whether you intended to turn it over because you're the current liaison, right?
Right, I am.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm perfectly okay with not taking that over. So if we want to that as you, okay.
But Linda, I'm confused about the recreation. Mary is
actually, I think
maybe if Mark is willing to do that, and maybe he would pick up the recreation.
I could do that.
Great. Thank you.
Do we have that straight?
We do.
Okay.
Do you have that?
Then are we done? Okay, that's wonderful. Onward and upward, right?
What about Cemetery Commission? Do we need a liaison for that? We don't have one right now on this list.
Somebody, we can deal with that later as the need arises. All right. So what does that leave with us as far as our agenda goes? We have correspondence. Is that what has next? Do we? Oh, Stefan, yes.
Looking at the.
Yeah, you're looking at the old one.
It's not the same as I know.
No, that was the compilation that I made. So that has no, that just reflects the choices that people expressed to me. The actual appoint, designate.
Yeah, I think
that was a work product.
I just noticed that there were two completely blank, and I wanted to make sure.
Oh, well,
That's why we did this. Exactly.
it was blank because there were ones.
Yep.
Unfortunately, that we just have some stepchildren, I guess, as commitments. So, all right. So, yes. All right. So we're moving on. We have some correspondence, I think, both about Hanscom, and everyone should know that Hanscom will be on the agenda for our next meeting. And what I want to say is that in terms of dealing with that issue, what I want to do is investigate what avenues that we have to actually affect the outcome. And who we need to talk to and what resources we need in order to deal with this proposed project. I'm hoping we will get more information in time for our next meeting. And we have the Hanscom representatives are coming to our meeting, and we'll.
Have we invited them?
Not yet,
Okay,
but I have time.
okay.
And the Massport representative.
3 of them.
Yeah.
Right. And they will be given each one 2 minutes each, just as we would get at town meeting. Having done all that, and our next meeting will be on June 5th, is that right?
No.
Well, May 22nd and then June.
May 22nd is our next meeting.
At what time?
6.
For those of us that need to be.
And
reminded.
now, look at what we've done. We've finished a meeting and it's 7:15. It's just
But I have another question.
never happened
It's
in the
amazing.
history of the world.
Except I have another question, just to be in trouble. Are we going to have a time to discuss select board goals for this year?
Thank you. Glad you raised that point. What I am asking every member of the board to do is to please send to me what they consider to be their 3 most important achievable and definable goals for what they feel we should achieve in this year of ours. And then I will amalgamate them and they will bring them back to the board for public discussion. Okay?
Okay. Or Shannon will amalgamate them, either, yeah.
Well, that's
That's the
5 times 3 is only like 15. I can handle that.
No, I know, I'm just.
It's
that
the same.
open meeting law thing
There might
again.
be overlap.
What?
There might be overlap. You never know.
That's right.
Mm.
So anyway,
Move to adjourn.
It is the same open meeting law issue as the
Right.
town manager's evaluation. That's what people are trying to say. Also, you said you would take public comment on agenda items, but that didn't happen.
well,
I'm sorry. I'm missing what?
I think the suggestion is that we take public comment on the agenda items at this stage, since the public comment on the agenda items was precluded at the earlier part of the meeting.
public comment on the agenda
Is that-
items.
No, I thought Tanya was talking about open meeting law as it
Well,
applies to the goals.
Mary,
That
I
was the first point.
Yeah.
Yes, and the other was that Henry said at the beginning of the meeting that he specified for agenda items to be for public comments in the beginning to be not on the agenda item because he intended to take comments on the agenda items later.
Okay.
So I was asking about that.
Okay. Thank you. Do I
So-
hear a motion to adjourn?
So I think the request from the
No.
public is to take public comment on agenda items that we've discussed at this meeting now, because they were not allowed earlier.
Right. Tanya
Oh,
Tanya
all right.
wants to make a
Just a
public
comment.
comment now.
Okay, you want to make some comments on the items that we have?
Thank you. Thank you
Thank-
very much. Yes, thank you. So about the Hanscom meeting on next week, as was suggested before, I hope you will also invite Save Our Heritage people who have been doing that petition and other information distribution on the issue. So that's one. The other thing is I had some thoughts about the town meeting format. It occurred to me that it might be helpful to ask the state to look more into ways to include people on Zoom, to change that is structure. Since so much has changed about public meetings after COVID, why not investigate what can be done for town meeting also? And that I have also observed that when there are controversial issues, that's when, usually the some people who didn't get what they wanted immediately start complaining about the town meeting format. But with representative town meeting, we do lose a lot of not only individual voices, but perhaps also ability to make decisions more freely as a town, because with the representatives, it becomes more of a political issue and more of give and take with other towns. We lose some independence in that. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Henry,
Thank you.
do you want to recognize Diane?
Diane, yes. Diane, would you like to,
Thank you. I have my buttons on my computer weren't working very well. Good evening, and thank you so much for taking some comments. I hope that there will be further discussion. Henry, I appreciate what you said about the relationship between select board members and committee liaisons. But I hope there will be further discussion about that among yourselves, and perhaps even inviting some commentary from the public, because I think the oversight that the select board offers can be invaluable. And although a close liaison and relationship with chairs is important, and I think that there are times when not just the engagement, but sometimes actually the intervention by the select board, it would be sought by the public and appreciated. So I hope you will think about that a little bit more fully before that particular somewhat new approach to attending committees is finalized. I'm sorry, I don't know if you're hearing what I'm saying. You seem to be talking back and forth with Terry, so I don't really know whether there's any opportunity to respond.
thank you. I think we're moving in the right direction, don't you?
I don't. That's the reason I'm asking us to think about it a little bit more. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, now, I think, any other comments? I think that hand is still up. So, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Roll
Favor?
call vote. Ms. Ackerman,
Aye.
Mr. Dane,
Aye.
Ms. Escobedo,
Aye.
Mr. Howell,
Aye.
myself, Mary Hartman, aye.